In the journey of life, you are in control of your own destiny. Where you go and how far, you decide. Good day, everyone. We have the pleasure of having with us esteemed Judge Paula Patrick, who is running for Supreme Court Justice of the Great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It has been well noted that Judge Patrick's conservative record and compelling story make her the Republican candidate liberal Democrats fear the most. Let's take a closer look to see how true this is and get to know the judge in case you missed her on Fox News and other media interviews, because in the end, you decide. Welcome, Judge Patrick.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here today.
Judge, tell us your story. How did you get to be at the pinnacle of holding the supreme judicial position of the Great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Well, actually, my story started long ago, obviously, as when I was a child, when I had gotten an interest in becoming a lawyer, being involved in our justice system. So I'll tell you the story real briefly. I actually born and raised in North Carolina. So my mom taught me to read at 3 years old. And unfortunately, I did not go to kindergarten. I went directly to first grade because they told my parents that I couldn't go to kindergarten because my father made too much money, which didn't make sense because it was a public school. But at any rate, I was forbidden or prevented from going to kindergarten, and I ended up going to first grade. So by the time I went to first grade, I was 6 and I could read pretty well. So my teacher would put you in a reading circle. You'd take your chair and you would put it in a circle and you would take turns reading. So one day, Anastasia, it was my turn to read. And I started reading. And of course, being 6 years old and could read, I was showing off there. And my teacher stopped me and she asked me, "Who taught you how to read?" And I said, "My mother." And she protested and asked me again, "Who taught you how to read?" And I said, "My mother." So apparently that wasn't the right answer because she took me and she sat me under the table. So I go home and I tell my mother what happened. My mother comes to the school. She and the teacher, they have words. But sure enough, the next day and for the rest of the school year, every time the students would read, she would sit me under the table. And so I tell you that story because I never forgot what it felt like to be mistreated. And I really devoted my life to ensuring that people would not have to feel the pain of injustice as I did at 6 years old. Because while I was under that table, I would hear how far they would read, and I would go home and read that much further. And that sparked my interest into reading autobiographies of great Black people, Harriet Truman, Thurgood Marshall, Louis Armstrong, people like that. And I saw the struggles that they had and what they endured. And I said, what they went through is nothing compared to what I have to deal with. And so that just deeply inspired me to want to pursue a career in justice and in law, because I've always hated injustice.
Well, that is truly a compelling story. We are certainly nothing without our history, and the new generations need to look into, learning what trials and tribulations others have gone for to fight for what we have today and appreciate it. And you know what? God bless our mothers, because you know what? They love this terribly and fight to the end for us.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm grateful for the parents that I had. They were both, great parents. My father was a soldier to serve this country honorably. He taught us several things. He taught us to, of course, love God, to love one another, and to love this nation. He also told us this. He told us that, you don't go to college to get a job. You go to create your own. So Anastasia, at the age of 25, once I finished law school, I came to Philadelphia, not knowing but one person here. And instead of me working for a judge or for a lawyer, as most people do that come into the legal profession, I started my own practice at 25 years old from the ground up in Philadelphia. I built a pretty successful general litigation practice for almost 10 years. I practiced all types of law, from contracts to personal injury, medical malpractice, to workers' compensation, municipal bond finance. And then I was elected in 2003 to the Court of Common Pleas. And that's where I have been ever since, doing major litigation and trial work on the Common Pleas Court bench.
Well, it's wonderful that you've always been a very independent thinker and fought hard to do the right thing for your path and fighting for others. So from what I understand, Judge, You have adjudicated over 20,000 cases over the last 17 years in Philadelphia. What is your ultimate guide in determining your cases?
Well, what happens is in Philadelphia, I hail from the largest court system in the state of Pennsylvania and the fifth largest court system in the nation. So the Philadelphia court system is very busy. We have major trial divisions, how our court is divided up. We have a juvenile trial division where I served for 6 years, doing cases dealing with juvenile delinquents and juvenile dependents, kids that are in the Department of Human Services system because of abuse, neglect, things like that. We also have a criminal trial system where I served about 5 years in that program, doing all types of major criminal matters, rapes, robberies, kidnapping, carjackings, etc., doing jury trials as well as bench trials. I then went to the family division for 1 year, where I served doing domestic relations cases, custody, divorce support. And then I ended up now where I currently sit in the civil trial division. I've been there now for 7 years. Totally, this is my 18th year on the Court of Common Pleas, where I've done all types of major litigation matters, jury trials, and things like that. And currently, for the past now, this is my 3rd year as the judicial team leader for the civil motions program, where I oversee about 2,000 plus cases a year in that program. Now, me having adjudicated more than 20,000 cases in my career spans from the time that I started in juvenile court up to where I am now, listening to all matters that have come before me, making decisions on all of those cases. And I have written more than 600 opinions to our 3 appellate courts. So my record is extensive in the work that I've done, and it's very diverse in the types of matters I've handled, unlike my opponents. And I can also tell you this, that I have been highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. In fact, I will submit this to you, that I'm the only common pleas court judge that's ever been highly recommended for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court by our Pennsylvania Bar Association. So I'm very, very proud of that. And in fact, they said this about me, Anastasia. They didn't say well about anyone else. And that is that they believe with confidence that me, Judge Patrick, would serve our Supreme Court with distinction. And that's obviously based upon my distinguishing characteristics that I bring before you.
Well, that is amazing. And I just want to share with the audience, when I met Judge Patrick, she was so spirited. And, I had heard some things, but it was a pleasure meeting you and knowing that you're the real McCoy and you stand by what you speak and what you believe. And it's interesting because people need to know you have been endorsed and highly endorsed by different organizations, including yes. also the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, which is a passion for a lot of conservatives. Tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Yes, I have been endorsed by the PA Pro-Life Federation PAC. And what that simply is that those of us that stand as pro-life, we get the support from the Pro-Life PAC. And that is that they endorse us based upon our views about abortion. And I'm proud to say that I stand proud to be a pro-life supporter. Also, I've been endorsed by FOAC, Firearm Owners Against Crime. I'm proud to say that I support our Second Amendment and all of our Bill of Rights.
Well, that's good to hear, because it does seem today more than ever that our Second Amendment right might be under attack. And
absolutely,
we need good judges, good legislators to protect the rights by the Constitution, the rights that you went to school for, you read diligently and applied over your cases. And that's what it seems like, because there's one thing to have passion and what you believe, and there's another to follow case by the law.
Absolutely.
So thank you. On May 18th, because it's a big day and it's coming up on us very soon, and there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation, and I don't know how far you could answer this for us, but I'm very curious because the first 2 questions are constitutional amendment questions related to executive orders and emergency declarations. Can you provide any clarification what these options mean? And also, how would possibly the state Supreme Court have a role in any way of applying this one way or another?
Well, what has to happen is anytime there's an amendment to our Constitution, our legislature must, of course, draft provisions that they like, and then it must go on the ballot for the voters to vote for it. So that's what we see here. And so there were 2 questions that were posed because of the lockdowns and different things, restrictions that the governor has placed upon the state Initially, I think it was supposed to be, I don't know if it was 30 days or so forth, and it continues to extend. And so the legislature felt like that this was an abuse of the governor's power and something should be done to curtail that. They then decided to craft this particular amendment to the Constitution, and voters can have the right to vote yes, so that the governor's powers are limited, or they can vote no, that they don't feel this power should be limited. But either way, it has to go on the ballot and people are to vote for it. So the choice is you can vote yes for questions 1 and 2 if you want the governor's powers limited, or you can vote no if you don't want the governor's powers limited.
And it's very important because a lot of people, they go out to vote for the big elections, the presidential, the senator, and so forth. Mm-hmm. But what they don't realize, and this is why we have to get the word out, voting for a judge, voting for your local elections, your primaries, people need to understand you can't complain if you haven't been part of the process. So please go out there and vote.
Yes.
And support the candidates. So I ask you with this last question, Judge Patrick. Since the primaries are coming up next week, there are 2 other Republicans running against you. So tell our audience, why should people turn out and vote and support you?
Absolutely. I will tell people this. I am the only candidate that's running that's been a judge for almost 20 years. None of my opponents have been a judge nearly as long as I have. I'm the only one that's running that has adjudicated more than 20,000 cases in my entire career, writing over 600 opinions to our 3 appellate courts, and having a very diverse experience in terms of my practice as well as the work that I've done. For example, my opponents were both on the Commonwealth Court, which is an appellate court here in Pennsylvania, but their jurisdiction is limited. In other words, they only do statewide elections and matters involving the Commonwealth or the government as a party. They don't do the majority of matters that come before the Supreme Court. They don't do any criminal cases. Of course, the heaviest part of the Supreme Court docket are criminal matters dealing with what we call capital murder cases. Obviously, there they have automatic appeal and habeas corpus petitions, things like that. They don't do any cases that relate to jury trials, family cases, cases involving medical malpractice, fraud, things like that. So the vast amount of cases that actually go before our Pennsylvania Supreme Court are actually heard on our common pleas benches. That's how a case gets into the system from the beginning, going through the common pleas court system, then matriculating upward, except for those statewide elections that actually go directly to the Commonwealth Court, and those matters involving government as a party that actually go directly there. But other than that, their experience would be limited. The other thing is that I'm the only candidate that's running that actually established and built a law practice at 25 years old out of law school. I'm the only candidate that is running that actually teaches and trains trial judges and trial lawyers. And I'm the only candidate that's running that I believe that can defeat the Democrats in November.
Well, they're certainly shaking at the knees because you're everything that they think we are not. An independent woman, an independent thinker, a fighter, and someone who doesn't necessarily look like the way they want to look. May I say that? Because
absolutely.
And you're a perfect example, Judge, if you don't mind me saying so, of representing all the beautiful people that we certainly are as conservatives, as constitutionalists, as Pennsylvanians.
Yes.
And they're shaking at the knees. All right. Judge Patrick, let me just say thank you so much for being on our show and for spending time with us. And we look forward to some good options for selecting leadership on May 18th. So important.
Yes. And I want people to, if I could just say real quickly, if they can go to my website, votepaulapatrick.com, they can find out more information about me. They can donate. They can volunteer. We still have time. And also, you can like me and follow me on Facebook and share my posts. Share my Facebook page at Judge Paula Patrick on Facebook. We have a lot of activity on Facebook, and we also are on Twitter at Judge Patrick PA, and we're also on Instagram for Paula Patrick for Supreme Court. So I'm looking forward to this coming Tuesday to victory by the hand of God, and for all of you all to come out and to support us. Judge Paula Patrick, I'm the very first name on the Republican ballot, Paula Patrick. And I tell people, Anastasia, a real way to remember my name real quickly is that Paula Patrick, I'm that young Black woman with the Irish name. So thank you so much.
well, thank you. And you have my mother's name too. So that means a lot to me. But I want to say that that information of contact to lend support is on the bottom of our screen. So please make sure to record that. And I leave this final question to our audience. If you think our Supreme Court needs a conservative judge who supports individual rights and freedoms, then you need to make sure to get out there and vote on May 18th. Because in the end, ultimately, you decide. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Thank you.
And please don't forget to go to freedompatriotsunited.com to become a Freedom Patriot and receive communications to help you stay informed of current political events and bills that may affect you in dramatic ways. Pre-registration has begun and sales on all our Freedom Patriot gear is now available. Please go to freedompatriotsunited.com. Thank you.